Welcome back, everyone, to ALECtv. My name is Michelle Bekkering, and I am from the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. I am so excited to be joined today for this discussion with my good friends, Ambassador Rahmani from Afghanistan and Ambassador Kelley Currie. So today we're talking about foreign investments. And we recognize today in our increasingly interconnected world that what's happening overseas directly impacts us here at home. And we also recognize that we need to be very judicious and smart with how we're investing our taxpayer dollars in foreign assistance. So today we're going to talk about an area that we all feel very passionately about, which is investing in women's empowerment and equality worldwide. And we have a case that it's not only because this is truly the right thing to do, but it's really the smart thing to do. And it has a direct impact and return on the investment here at home when it comes to the economy and when it comes to our national security. So let's kick things off. Ambassador Rahmani, I think of anyone, you really embody so much of why we invest in this. You grew up as a refugee watching what was going on in your home country, and you decided to come back and work towards peace and progress in Afghanistan. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. As you said, I experienced oppression of women firsthand myself. And that was the reason that I decided to go back when there was that opportunity. And who provided the opportunity was the United States of America with the rest of the allies that went and intervened in Afghanistan in 2001. Life was very dark and bleak before that for all people, particularly for women of Afghanistan. There were no single girls in schools. They were not allowed out of the houses without a male escort. And they couldn't hold jobs. They couldn't do anything normal then. And the moment that the United States intervened, that was a moment of peace. It was a moment of hope, and it was a moment to be seized, to sustain that hope. There was that opportunity to sustain that hope. And that was the motivation why I went back to join this mission, to contribute and to help people know that they could live the life that they desire to.
So, Ambassador Currie, you served as the U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues. And I'm not sure if everyone knows, the U.S. government really does put a high emphasis on this and has this post. So tell us a little bit about that, especially to our viewers who might say, you know, we really believe in fiscal responsibility. Why is this an area that the U.S. government is really investing in?
Well, thank you, Michelle, for that great question, because I actually had that question myself when I was first asked to take on this post, because it wasn't the first thing that would come to my mind in terms of what I would want to be doing to impact U.S. foreign policy, which is my career. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that every dollar that we spend on U.S. foreign assistance that's directed toward education or economic opportunity for women and girls is we get the best return on investment for those expenditures. And the United States is working all over the world in places that are sources of a lot of conflict and places that create threats that end up back at our homeland. And those places that generate the greatest threats to the U.S. homeland are places where women's rights are the most under threat as well. And there's a direct correlation between those things. So it's not just about a feel-good or something that makes us, nice people that we're doing this. It actually has a direct impact on our security here at home, because if we can help countries to become more resilient by improving the prospects for women and girls in those countries, then it actually redounds to our benefit from a national security standpoint. It also helps to create new markets and new opportunities for our economy as well. And it builds stronger partners and creates, over time, the goal is actually to create less dependency and more self-reliance in these countries so that we can reduce the amount of foreign assistance, reduce the insecurity that these places produce that we then have to deal with, that never, whether it's unchecked immigration from the Northern Triangle because women and girls can't be safe in their homes or can't get jobs, or the situation in Afghanistan as well. All of these places, what we want to do is help these societies become more self-reliant and more resilient in their ability to fight off extremism, fight off the kind of violence that arises from conflict and poverty and the challenges that these societies face.
Which have a direct impact, right, on the challenges we then
Exactly.
see here at home. So let's follow up on that. You know, Ambassador Rahmani, talk to me about the role of women in public office in your country, specifically in Afghanistan, to address a lot of these issues. We're here at ALEC, the Legislative Exchange Council, and we've talked this morning with a lot of women legislators. But tell us a little bit about the experience in Afghanistan and what that has meant to have women in those roles.
Well, having women in public office is basically promoting a culture of peace, a culture of democracy, and also better economy and national security. In Afghanistan, how it has translated is that when United States intervened, we did not have any women in public office. Of course, they weren't even allowed to work. But then, by introducing quotas, we, for example, keyed in 25% women legislatures in our parliament, and now there is 28% of them, way above the global average. And it is through their own hard work, but the impact of it on the communities, on the society, and on the at the national level is huge. Just to name a few, number one, the diversity of the opinion that they bring to the table would make a huge difference. They are basically breaking the echo chambers where some people's concerns and voices would never be heard otherwise. They are bringing the interest of the communities to the table, and they get down to the business. They are trying to represent their communities, their families, their societies, and contribute and be part of rebuilding a country that dismisses half of the potential of its population is a handicapped society. It's a handicapped country. So that is what it all means.
Well, and so important, and we've talked earlier too, that the more women you see in political positions, the more women who have equality, the more women in peace and security negotiations, the less conflict you have in a country.
Absolutely.
So, Ambassador Currie, I want to talk specifically about an initiative that you helped champion during the Trump administration called the Women's Global Development and Prosperity Initiative, which was really a landmark achievement. Talk to us a little bit about that and why that was so important for the government to invest in.
So as I mentioned before, our return on investment when we invest in women and girls is off the charts better than any other investment that we make in our foreign assistance programs. The track record is very clear. But we often do things that are not necessarily reaching women where they are or that have a long-term potential for success. With WGDP, and Michelle knows this very well because she was one of the key architects of this incredible program, we really looked at how we can help empower women where they are, meet them in the place where they are, and get them the tools and the skills, the training, the financing. Access to capital is a huge problem for women, especially in the developing world. And to learn the lessons that we can from our own success here in the United States about how women's economic participation has been a huge driver for economic prosperity and also led to women's greater political participation. So many of the women you meet who are in politics, they started out in business, and that's what gave them the confidence to then go on and run for office. So you see this as a really virtuous circle. What we then looked at is, okay, where can we have the most impact for the least amount of money? We were really focused on low-cost, high-impact activities. And entrepreneurship was one that we really keyed in on because we saw how women have been very successful as entrepreneurs in the United States. And when you go in other countries, you see that, it's the women in the marketplace, it's the women who are actually driving the markets, but then they can't scale up their business. They can sell stuff in the marketplace, but they can't be the supplier to a supermarket chain or something like that. So we were really focused on how do we help them scale up. And that means getting access to financing, removing regulatory barriers that stand in their way, getting them training on how to do a business plan, for instance. So we worked on a whole suite of programs with USAID, and 10 different agencies of the US government were involved in this. It was a huge multi-agency program with a tiny price tag that was set to impact positively more than 25 million women in the developing world and help them become more economically self-sufficient, help their families and communities to be more prosperous and resilient. And we saw huge success in the first 2 years. Up to 12 million women were impacted in 2 years. It was really a great high impact program with a very, very small budget, which I love as a fiscal conservative myself.
And definite impact. I mean, and to your point, if you want to talk about a compelling statistic, if we were to decrease the gender gap in workforce globally, it would add $28 trillion to the global economy. I mean, I think it's hard not to get behind that as an effective, efficient, strategic investment.
Yeah, that's the size of the U.S. economy.
It's incredible.
Right there. And so when we would go in, instead of going and talking to the women's ministries, which we would partner with them, but we would also go and talk to the finance ministry, right? And say to the finance ministers who are responsible for GDP growth, you know, the biggest drag on your GDP growth is the fact that women can't fully participate in your workforce because there's a law that says they can't work after dark, or there's a law that says they can't work in the mining sector, which is the biggest economic driver of growth in your country. And you have unemployment in that sector because you can't get people to come in and work in it, but you're excluding half of your workforce from it. It's crazy. So talking to these finance ministers who are all about dollars and cents and getting them on board was really, really critical.
So, Ambassador Rahmani, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you the question I think all of our viewers are wondering about in the future of Afghanistan. And I can't think of anyone who has more at stake than, a woman leader from Afghanistan. But talk to us about where Afghanistan is now, with American troops withdrawing, with a change in what the relationship looks like. Tell us about what you envision for the future of Afghanistan, how as Americans we can still support you, and importantly, what does it look like for women and girls with all the hard, won gains, the hard-fought gains that they have won?
Well, let me start by saying, first of all, that you hear probably a lot these days about what's happening in Afghanistan, and it is mostly dark and gloom, which is true, and it is unfortunately happening, but at the same time, you do not get to see the rest of the picture, that what the investment that you have made has done, how many lives it has changed, how many people have prospered, and how many people have completely different vision in terms of their lives moving forwards. So let me first of all say that there has been massive changes in Afghanistan. The changes that have been, a lot of it were unprecedented in our history that took place in the past 20 years. Let me give you an example. The human capital that was built in the past 20 years is unprecedented for the country, which is actually the main factor for taking a country forward. And it's a very young country, I must say. So, having said that, I would like to say that there is a lot at stake right now. It's a very decisive moment. You have invested massively with blood, treasure, and so much hard work. And we have reciprocated that with so much blood and tears and sweat from our end too, to take the country to a place that it would not only not be a security threat for anyone, for itself and for the region and for its allies, but also move towards being self-reliant, being a constructive partner in the global stage and whatnot. Now is a very decisive moment, and we need patience, we need monitoring, we need accountability, we need sustainable support, but also bit of a different ways and approaches. The approaches, the strategies that we have tried and have not worked in the past, probably they are not bound to work in the future either. So it is important to, as we are planning to move forward, to think of some additional creative strategy to focus on empowering communities, and particularly focus on women empowerment. So to sum it up, the way I would define this is that the indicator of what is going to happen in Afghanistan would be what would happen to women of Afghanistan. If the women of Afghanistan continue to sustain their success, to be able to access education, healthcare, opportunities to work, and be respected as equal citizens, that means we are going to the right direction. And the policies should be set and supported in a direction that guarantees that. If you have that going, then the rest would follow. That would be the indicator. But let me also say this. So much has happened for women of Afghanistan. And this would not have happened unless without the US intervention. It was your contribution. It was your hard work. It was the sacrifices that the women and men in uniform paid, those who paid the ultimate price, and their families, around 1 million veterans that have served in the country, and the taxpayers' dollars. They may not necessarily know this. This is not something that they would hear about it. But I would encourage all Americans that when they think about Afghanistan, they should also think about what their contributions has made. And I can tell you it has been massive. The reason I returned, and many thousands of people returned back, the reason that so many of us got educated and found new lives is because of you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the work you've put into it. I mean, you're such a champion of peace and progress in your country. You know, at USGLC, we have really this belief, right, that we can't not invest in this, right? And we are a large bipartisan coalition, and we're made up of faith-based organizations and private sector companies, elected officials, you know, former veterans, et cetera. And one of the things we have recognized is that everyone has a stake in our investments in foreign policy, in international assistance. And we like to think of it this way. What's it worth to you? So in closing, I want to ask each of you this. And I'll start with you, Ambassador Rahmani, but very succinctly, you know, foreign assistance, what's it worth?
It is worth what you would like it to worth. In other words, if I can define what foreign policy means to me as a recipient, and then also seeing the donor policies and whatnot, is that foreign aid is an investment opportunity, both for a donor and a recipient country. How you make use of it and how you make sure that this is well coordinated, that it would, the investment would have the return that you are expecting, is what it means and what it's worth. It worth nothing unless you are not looking at it as an opportunity at both sides. It is a very, very important and unique opportunity. And coordinated link and expectation is the key. When you invest in foreign aid, you must have expectation. And that expectation should drive accountability.
I love that. That's so powerful. It's an investment in opportunity. Ambassador Currie, same question to you. What's it worth?
It's hard to follow that because I agreed with everything that my friend Ambassador Rahmani said. But I think that she's right, and I want to pick up on that word about accountability. You know, this is not just play money that grows on a tree that we pick up and give out of the generosity of our, you know, heart or because we're nice people. We are using U.S. taxpayer dollars. We, as those who are programming these funds, who are responsible for them, have a very serious public trust at stake. And it's not our money, it's, it's the money of the American people. And we need to always remember that. And we are responsible, we need to be responsible stewards of these taxpayer funds and make sure that we are getting that return on investment. And the bottom line there is that we have to have credible partners to invest with. And you wouldn't go take your money, your pension fund, and invest it in some shady person who has a reputation for corruption and makes you lots of promises that they can't deliver on. We should have the same kind of thinking when we go in and look at our partners and who we're planning to work with, and what are they trying to accomplish, what is their level of commitment, do they share our principles and our values, do they have skin in the game? This is, if they don't have skin in the game, then there's not enough money in the world, as we've, as your former boss and my friend Mark Green said, there's not enough money in the world to solve all the problems or to try to even start. But if you have committed partners, then there's really no limit to what you can do. And it's not about the amount, it's really about how you're strategic and thinking about it and who you choose to partner with when you spend it.
Absolutely. And I think to sum that up, there is no one more generous than the American people. And it has been so incredible to see the great partnerships the American people have created with countries like Afghanistan.
And huge orders of magnitude from outside of government. I mean, think about the church groups
Absolutely.
And the national volunteer
Absolutely.
organizations, that's charitable organizations. And those are force magnifiers that we should really be using and aligning our programs with.
We're all in this together. So with that, ladies, thank you so much. Thanks to ALECtv for giving us this opportunity.